to members of the House and Senate, both present and past, to Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, our constitutional officers, to our sovereign tribal leaders, thank you all for being here today on a moment that I think many of us thought about, wondered how this would feel. And as I came out of my office today, and having been here over the last 8 months, it's been quiet, but to hear this building wake up to the People's House when all of you are back, and to be here for Mark and Melissa, to the Hortman family, to Harry and Linda, Colin, Sophie, and the entire family. Hard to come up with the words, but as I think 8 months of this tragedy and watching you have to endure not just the loss, but the very public grieving, the grace and dignity and decency that you've conducted yourself is a lesson for all of us. You've not only had to grieve, you've had to figure out how life goes on. We had a wedding in there, and Colin, thank you for allowing me to sing at your wedding. I am incredibly grateful for that. But to watch a family gather and try and heal, to watch a community, a thank you to our honor guards, and a thank you, Representative, for honoring Gilbert, who was lost in this. For all of us, for me, first time being back in this space, since I have had the privilege of serving in state government. It's the first time without Melissa, the Speaker. And I don't think it was any secret that we were partners, and she was a security blanket. But I think it's important in this space to say we were partners, but we had two very different jobs. She was very clear. She was the Speaker of the House. And when she meant that, she meant this entire building. And she often reminded me, each and every one of the people who sat in front of you have their own election certificate, and that matters. And I think for many of you who know, it was very rare to find Melissa Hortman having a harsh word about anybody. But she did it, and she reserved it for those times when we earned it, myself included. And after it happened, I stepped back, as we should, and tried to be more self-reflective. It was an incredible gift for her to understand that. I don't think that got told. I think this institution, the sense of democracy, and for each and every one of you, if I would start going on a partisan rant, it was Speaker Hortman who would many times redirect that to, what is your goal, Governor, to get done here? Because it's certainly not the rant. It needs to be something else. And is this going to get us any closer to where you're trying to go? That's wisdom. That's experience, that's decency, that's leadership, and those things were all exhibited. And so trying to wrap my mind around this, because I hear people talk about it and they know that there was a shooting in Minnesota and elected officials and Senator Hoffman and a vet and his family. The public reached out. They understood what this was. They understood it was an assault on the democracy. But I think it's hard to express the loss, the sense of, I don't know if calling it the loss of innocence is right, but what was taken from all of us, and the sense of each and every one of you doing public service with your family. And to watch this family, to watch this body, to watch our state try and grapple and move through this, and other tragedies have come on top of it as we're living through. But I think it's important in this moment, and I'm grateful to this body, Leader Stephenson, to everybody for pausing, for making note of this, because again, the way you honor Melissa and Mark is how we conduct ourselves afterwards. It's one thing to be reflective to the past and to tell stories of the past. It's another to what did we learn from that. And I would just close with where it started when I got to know Melissa Hortman, got to know the Speaker, and it was in 2019. And again, Minnesota's unique in this. Very few states have divided legislators. I think at the time there were two. I think it was us in Alaska maybe, I'm not sure. It's very rare. which meant we had to work together. That was the first session in 2019, and the last one was, of course, last year. And in both cases, we had divided legislators. We had very spirited discussions, and we ended with budgets that served the people of Minnesota. We didn't all get what we wanted, but we got compromises that got things done. And I think understanding that is that when I first got here, some of you know this, the speaker gave me the book, Getting to Yes. And those of you who are familiar with it, it's negotiating from a position that everybody needs to be part of it. Everybody needs to get there. And she gave this book to myself, to Senator Gazelka, and then she had it. And we read it, and we tried to do a little book club thing where we'd come back together and talk about it. But the book club was the actual session, and something that I have kept the whole time. And I think if you want to know who the heart and soul when it came to the legislator and the person that Melissa Hortman was, she wrote a very short note that accompanied this. And keep in mind, this is 2019, it's the first session. I came here after 12 years in Congress, so all of you knew that was a bad sign to start with. But she made clear about level setting what this place was and what our job was. And if you would just allow me, and I have not shared this with anyone, but I do think it's important. Dear Governor Walz, I'm looking forward to our work in the coming weeks to finalize a budget that gives Minnesotans the quality of public services they deserve. I also do believe that you, Senate Majority Leader Gazelka, and I can do this differently than it's been done in recent years in Minnesota and certainly in Washington, D.C. Governing is very different from campaigning. We'll take the fight to our opponents in 2020 elections. But in the meantime, we need to find win-wins together and the humanity in each other. Thanks for doing what you're doing. I look forward to our deliberations. Always, Melissa. And for me, it was the grounding of what it takes to get things done here, the grounding in the humanity that we all share, the grounding in that this is hard work. I think the grounding in getting to yes is a lot harder than simply saying no. It's a lot harder to get to yes than to dig in and believe you're right and the other side has nothing to offer. So as I stand in front of you for the last legislative session, you can cheer for that if you so. The last time, I think in that spirit of how we've done this, that I look to myself first to do better for the state of Minnesota, to do so in the spirit that Speaker Hortman understood this needed to be done, to stand firmly on your principles, but to see the humanity in one another. That is an incredible gift. I miss my friend every day. I miss the wisdom that she brought, the humor, the decency. And I just hope the work that we do here does her proud, because she cared so deeply about this institution that it's all of our responsibilities to continue to carry that out. So to the Hortman family, may you find peace in those incredible memories. May you know that Mark and Melissa made an impact on all of us that will last our lifetimes. Their memory is not going to die. Their memory is going to build a better Minnesota. And thank you for sharing those two beautiful people with us.
Good afternoon, dear friends, colleagues, members and staff, fellow leaders, fellow Americans. I watched again this morning the speech that Melissa gave on the day that she became the Speaker of the House. She shared her love for her family and her commitment to being the Speaker for the whole House, setting aside the blue and the red. And she spoke about her love for her work here in this beautiful chamber. Behind me is the rostrum from where she presided, leading the state as the most consequential speaker in Minnesota history. Melissa was a part of my entire tenure to now. She guided my big class of first-termers, not with cheering us on and affirmation, but with expectation. Constituents, constituents, constituents. Sound familiar? She knew if we didn't do our work, we would lose the opportunity to lead. And when we did lose, as we do, she had very little to say about it. Instead, she showed up in a conference room with a sharp pencil, gathered the numbers, and got to work. Classic Hortman. Our last conversation was at the end of the June special session. She teased me because the Senate ran late that very early morning, which, I was pretty mad about. But she waited for me. We talked about the session, about the hard and protected negotiation, and relief that a budget was on its way to the governor's desk. She was deeply committed to that goal, and she refused to fail. She never gave up. On June 14th, her bright light was extinguished. Along with Mark and Gilbert. That day was the start of what has been the longest summer and the hardest winter. Children killed in a church, Minnesotans killed in the street. And we return here together, altered, some terrorized, fearful, but determined. That's what courage is for. And as I look around, as I look at all of us, what as I see is the courage to continue the work for the people of Minnesota. And as we are here together, we have a choice. Will we devolve into the familiar and increasingly dangerous partisan divide? Or will we do what I believe Melissa would want us to do, to lead with conviction and a plan for Minnesota? I believe the finest memorial to Melissa is to embody her spirit and her purpose. And as the pastor, William Sloane Coffin, would say, our world is too dangerous for anything but truth, and too small for anything but love. May the road rise to meet you, Melissa, till we meet again. Thank you.
I'm honored to pay tribute to Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman today. Melissa was a leader whose legacy will outlast any single legislative session or political moment. Governor Walz, Leader Murphy, thank you for your words. Leader Stephenson, thank you for working together to bring us together in this way today. I want to thank Melissa's children, Colin and Sophie, for sharing your mother with our state for so many years. You are her most enduring legacy, and she was so proud to be your mother. I know the magnitude of the loss that we feel as her friends and colleagues is only a shadow of what your family is experiencing. Melissa was the only House Speaker I have had the honor to serve under, and every day she modeled the importance of leading with conviction and kindness. I'm blessed to have had the opportunity to learn those lessons both from her and with her. When I became Minority Leader in 2023, Melissa, as Speaker of the House, reached out to me right away and asked for a weekly meeting. She didn't have to do that. She didn't need my votes. She could have easily dismissed me as just another member of the minority party. And I think other leaders might have, but she didn't. Melissa's brand of leadership brought people in instead of shutting them out. She paved the way for a relationship where we never stopped listening to each other, even when we fundamentally disagreed. She was a real leader who could keep her caucus together despite the divisions at times. And I remember a time at the end of a particularly difficult session where I told her when this was all over and the legislature was far behind us, I wanted to sit down with her and find out how she did it. She kind of smiled in her way, gave me one tip, and the rest she didn't really share. But I have deep regret knowing that we'll never get that opportunity. She was a fearless leader. Through shared stories about our families, especially our children, through many laughs, a joint love for jalapeno Cheetos, and a need to consume more protein, and countless texts to see if we were going to be matching that day. We apparently shopped at the same places. But we built something that has become too far and too rare in politics. We built a relationship that was rooted in respect. Through tough negotiations and heated debates, Melissa and I could always look across the table and know that regardless of our differences, we both wanted what was going to be best for Minnesota. We didn't always see eye to eye, but we always saw each other. And that mattered deeply, and it still does. Our strongest disagreements never turned personal because we held on to mutual respect. Over the last year, Melissa and I worked hard to show that you can fiercely debate policy and process while still respecting the person on the other side of that debate. You can be principled and civil. You can deeply disagree and still be kind. Melissa never dismissed my perspective, and I never dismissed hers. So that made room for real conversations instead of talking points. And in our world today, that's something worth fighting for. I don't want to gloss over our disagreements, but I want to highlight what is truly possible. When we remember that public service is about people. Melissa understood that deeply, and she left behind a powerful example, not just for her caucus, but for every one of us. The last night that I saw Melissa, the night of our special session, and we did get done before the Senate, we each planned to go talk to the media about the work of the special session. She went first, and then she spoke with deep conviction and much emotion. As I walked out the front door of the chamber, I stopped and went back. I turned back to talk to Melissa. And what she said to me in that moment will stay with me forever. She said, "I like it so much better when we get along than when we fight. I like it so much better than when we get along than when we fight." Melissa's legacy will be remembered for what she accomplished, yes. But even more, her legacy will be remembered for how she accomplished it. With conviction, with kindness, fierce determination, and the unwavering belief that our institutions only function when we treat each other with dignity. So in our grief, I hope that moving forward, we can all learn to lead in a better way, rooted in respect, giving grace to those around us, a way that was modeled by Melissa Hortman.
Today is a tough day, and on this tough day, I'm grateful that my friend John Hoffman is just a few feet in front of me here. And I'm grateful that you're right there, but I'm mostly grateful that you're here. And I'm grateful that Yvette's here, and that Kurt's here. I first met Melissa Hortman in 2002. I was 17 years old. I was a senior in high school who was interested in campaigns and elections. Melissa was running for the Minnesota House for the second time. She had run and lost in 1998, and she would go on to lose in 2002 as well. Many people would have given up after the first loss, most after the second, but not Melissa. She ran again in 2004 and won. Her persistence, her strength of will, those were defining aspects of Melissa Hortman. But make no mistake, her persistence wasn't about ambition. It was about service. Melissa said that her parents, in particular Linda, instilled in her the principle that to whom much is given, much is expected. She felt that she had both the ability and the obligation to serve. Service was at the core of her identity. She carried with her a card that had the prayer of St. Francis. It begins, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace." She was so smart, so talented. She could have had great success in the private sector, but at every turn, she prioritized service. When she graduated law school, she passed up opportunities at big law firms to work at legal aid. When Colin and Sophie left the nest and Melissa was lonely, she did get a dog, but it was a service dog, a dog she knew she'd have to give up. Fortunately for Melissa and for Gilbert, he flunked his training. And when she was working long hours for little pay on Capitol Hill after college, she made time to mentor kids who were less fortunate. That's how she met Mark, when they were assigned to mentor the same kid. Mark Hortman was such a good dude. I have difficulty imagining his face without a smile on it. He was one of the most good-natured people I have ever met and had an incredibly diverse set of interests, from mountain biking to building robots to brewing beer to playing pool. Just a good dude. Melissa and Mark clearly passed along that commitment of service to Colin and Sophie. Many of you will remember their exceptional statement after the horrible days of June 14th. The best way to honor our parents is to do something, whether big or small, to make our community a little better for someone else. That was Melissa. The commitment to service, but also the commitment to action. Do something. Melissa didn't have patience for fancy words or symbolic victories. She wanted progress. And she got it. Since her death, many folks have described Melissa Hortman as the most consequential speaker in Minnesota history. She led this chamber through some of the most difficult moments in our state's history, and future generations will look back favorably on how she led. Think about a child born in 2026. That child may never know Melissa Hortman's name, but Melissa Hortman will shape her life. Her parents will have paid family medical leave. She will be less likely to grow up in poverty because of the child tax credit. She will eat breakfast and lunch at school, no questions asked. College will be more affordable. Opportunity will be wider, and on and on. Melissa's legacy will reverberate through generations. She worked so hard to get here, but she was certain, and I mean it, certain, that she was going to lose after her first term. In 2005, the state went into a partial government shutdown, and she thought that was it. She would tell me all the time about how she would sit in this chamber during those days and look up at this beautiful ceiling and think about how much she loved the work that we do here and how much she would miss it. But let me be clear, what really troubled her about the shutdown in 2005 and why she was so determined to avoid shutdowns when she was Speaker, far more than the political impact, was the human impact. She knew there were things that were more important than politics. She knew that when the government shut down, folks go without pay. They wouldn't know how they were going to pay their mortgage or put food on the table for their kids. She felt that deeply and was absolutely determined to avoid it. Melissa cared deeply about all of the people who worked here too, both partisan and nonpartisan. Her push to make sure that we don't have floor sessions past midnight was in part because we don't do our best work late at night, but it was mostly about protecting the safety of our staff and those drives home in the early hours, especially the staff here at the front desk, who she had special affinity for. Melissa was kind and patient and encouraging with young and new staff. She had high expectations. She could be blunt and honest with her longtime staff, but that was because she had so much confidence and trust in all of you. To Melissa's team, she cared so much for each and every one of you, trusted you, loved working with you. She spotted talent and invested in it. She wasn't afraid to be surrounded by other leaders. She had this way of communicating to people that she had every faith and confidence in you. And when that happens, when that comes from someone you trust and respect like Melissa Hortman, it means the world. I am a better legislator, a better leader, a better human because Melissa Hortman invested in me. And I know there are so many people in this room who feel the same way. And to all of you, I say, hang on to that. Hang on to that feeling because she meant it. She meant it. So as we try to move forward as a Minnesota House of Representatives, I know I'm not alone and sometimes feeling a little lost without Melissa. Only one of our 134 members, Representative Davids, knows what it's like to serve in the Minnesota House of Representatives without Melissa Hortman. But Melissa left us the model. Let's care about the institution and each other as much as Melissa did. Let's put our heads down and get to work. In recent years, one of Melissa's top legislative priorities was trees. Melissa loved trees. If you visited her home, you were very likely to get a tour of all the trees she had planted. And as Speaker, she sprinkled money throughout many different budgets for tree planting. There are whole forests of trees in Minnesota because of Melissa Hortman. There's an old Greek proverb that says that a society grows great when old men and women plant trees knowing that they will never get to sit under their shade. Our society still has some work to do, but Melissa Hortman was great. Thank you. Thank you.